The beginning of the film starts at a traditional food stall managed by a talented young chef named Aoi. This stall is famous for its delicious cuisine and affordable prices. For just $1, visitors can enjoy a plate of vermicelli with delicious boiled dumplings. This recipe was passed down from their grandmother. One day, a visitor in a white shirt named Tone
ฝีมือขนาดเนี้ยน่าจะอยู่ในที่ที่เหมาะกว่านี้นะ
Because Aoi doesn't know Hunger Restaurant, Aoi asks her friend while taking a break.
วันนี้แม่งมีคนแปลกๆเขายื่นในนี่มาให้กูด้วยวะชวนกูไปทำงานด้วยนะเว้ยมึงรู้จักปะ
ไอ้เหี้ยฮังเกอร์เชฟพอลเลยเหรอวะ
After searching for information on Google, Aoi learns that the man is an assistant chef at a fancy restaurant called The Hunger. Hunger Restaurant is owned by Chef Paul, the #1 top chef in Thailand. This restaurant is known for its very scary dish, and fantastic prices are super expensive. As the name implies, the Hunger Restaurant has a unique slogan. The more you eat, the more you feel hungry. The next day, Aoi felt upset. How long will my life be like this? Every day, it's just frying. Without thinking, Aoi decides to accept Tone's offer and join the Hunger team. Aoi is determined to change her life and take her family's culinary heritage to new heights. When Aoi arrives at the Hunger Restaurant, Aoi is fascinated to see the restaurant's kitchen filled with sophisticated cooking utensils, very different from this stall which still uses used black frying pans.
วางลงเดี๋ยวนี้
ขอโทษค่ะ
Soon, a new chef named Pat appears, a graduate of a well-known cooking school with the highest grades, who wants to work, also at a Hunger Restaurant. Before becoming Chef Paul's assistant, Aoi and Pat had to fight in cooking competition.
สวัสดีครับเชฟผมแพทครับผมเคยเป็นผู้ช่วยอยู่ที่ไม่มีใครถามข้าวผัดมันไม่ง่ายเกินไปเหรอครับ
After smelling the scent of Aoi's fried rice dish, Chef Paul asks Pat to go home.
กลับบ้านไปเฮ้ยเชฟผมแพ้ได้ไงได้แล้วดูก็รู้แล้วข้าวผัดหน้าตาบ้านอย่างนี้นะจะชนะผมบอกแล้วใช่ไหมพวกเด็กที่จบสถาบันไม่ค่อยมีจินตนาการไม่ค่อยมีเซนส์การใช้ไฟแบบเด็กหน้าเตาครับเชฟ
Chef Paul said that the warm rice taken from the magic jar is not good compared to yesterday's leftover cold rice taken from the refrigerator by Aoi. Coupled with the large frying pan and unique cooking techniques, the taste of the fried rice becomes even more delicious. After winning the match by smelling only Aoi's body, Chef Paul immediately finds out that he has just made fried rice noodles.
กลิ่นควันจากร้านผัดซีอิ๊วของเธอไม่เหมาะกับที่นี่ล้างเนื้อล้างตัวแล้วเปลี่ยนชุดซะ
Shortly after taking a shower and putting on the assistant chef's clothes, Tone introduces people who work at the Hunger Restaurant. The first being Dang as assistant chef Paul, Tu as the handler in charge of the soup section, Ken as the appetizer, Bai as the kitchen assistant, and can't talk Thai, and Tone himself as assistant to Chef Paul, and Aoi as Fry Chef Paul. Then Chef Paul told them that tomorrow's event is a lavish birthday party of a former general attended by politicians and business people aged 40 and over. The theme of the cuisine is flesh and blood. At the lavish event, Aoi was assigned to grill a 5 Wagyu beef. The A5 Wagyu beef must be sliced as thin as possible and cooked with proper fire control skills so that when eaten it feels tender and does not need to be chewed.
Yang หนาไป จับมีดให้มั่น ตั้งมีดให้ตรง อย่าให้เนื้อขาด กูบอกว่าอย่าเลื่อย สุกเกินไป สุกไปแล้ว สุกไป น้ำมันเยอะเกินไป ทำไปจนกว่าจะได้ หรือถ้ากูกลับมาแล้วไม่เห็นมึง ก็แสดงว่า ที่ของมึง คงเป็นได้แค่ที่ร้านราดหน้า
After hearing all the words of Chef Paul that made her mentally depressed, Aoi, who was about to go home, even returned to the kitchen thinking again, and decided to go back to the kitchen with the remaining of 5 Wagyu beef. Aoi continued to practice cooking the meat until it was completely cooked. One morning, when Tone and the other assistants arrive in the kitchen, they find Aoi asleep on the floor. As it turns out, Aoi has been practicing cooking a 5 Wagyu beef late into the night and striving to achieve the perfect doneness. Chef Paul, who tasted Aoi's A5 Wagyu beef, fell silent in amazement.
เอาใช้น้ำมัน
At an important event attended by many important people, Aoi showed her skills in cooking a 5 meat perfectly. Everyone who watched Aoi's cooking show applauded. Aoi's cooked a 5 Wagyu beef is then processed into sausages, cut and served with luxurious-looking garnishes. After the guests finish their food, a luxury restaurant investor named Tuz approaches Aoi and gives her a business card. The next day, even though there is no cooking schedule at the Hunger restaurant, Aoi still cooks at her stall on the side of the road. While resting, he was visited by his best friend Jund. There, Aoi commented that the rice Jund ate seemed less attractive. According to him, food should be cooked perfectly and look attractive to the eye.
คนเราอ่ะจะเอาอะไรเข้าปากทีอ่ะให้มันดูน่ากินหน่อยบอกไว้อาหารไฮโซคงดีมันกูไม่เคยแดกนึกออกมั้ย
แต่มันคืออาหารทำให้คนเขาตังค์เหลือๆแดกกัน อย่างมึงอ่ะกูกินแค่นี้ก็พอเว้ย อร่อยถูกท้องอิ่ม
After getting a call from Tone, Aoi and Tone go on a boat to Kadangwanan Beach. There, they learn that the secret of Hunger restaurant cuisine is not only from the way it is cooked, but also from the selection of fresh ingredients, such as fish, that have just been caught by fishermen.
มาที่นี่บ่อย เมื่อก่อนมากับเชฟ แต่เดี๋ยวนี้เชฟไว้ใจให้ลงมาทานเองแล้วไง
Back in the kitchen of Hunger restaurant, after successfully cooking a 5 meat perfectly, Aoi now doesn't get any work and Chef Paul only orders her to clean the kitchen, wash dishes, mop the floor, and take out the trash.
ทำไมถึงคิดว่าตัวเองสำคัญขนาดนั้นนะซอยผักแบบแบร์ให้ดูสิเร็วขึ้น เร็วขึ้นอีก เร็วขึ้นอีก อีก
One day, the restaurant Hunger was invited to cook at a sultan's children's party in a luxury villa on a coastal cliff. Everyone who tastes Chef Paul's salted squid, they praise and really idolize Chef Paul. Meanwhile, Chef Paul's assistants feel disrespected and begin to think that being an assistant chef is not a matter of pride. The next day, while at her stall, Aoi makes an expensive dish of tenderloin steak for her father.
อร่อยดี
Soon came Jund, who brought coffee from an expensive restaurant with coffee beans harvested from the top of Mount Everest.
เนี่ยปะ
Aoi's father also commented that food and drinks in this modern era are very diverse. After that, day after day in between her days off work, Aoi often visits Tone's house. There they taught each other the science of cooking. Tone is taught by Aoi how to cook using traditional techniques, while Aoi is taught by Tone how to cook using modern techniques in the style of expensive restaurants.
ก็กระทะเหมือนกันนั่นแหละไม่เคยเลยเป็นไงคะเชฟ
Back in the Hunger restaurant kitchen, when all the members were tired of working, one of the Hunger restaurant members was seen by Chef Paul smoking while cooking.
เอาออกทำไม
Chef Paul's anger increased when he discovered that the dried Wagyu beef he had stored for years had disappeared. If no one admits to being the perpetrator, Chef Paul will look at the CCTV footage and the perpetrator will be reported to the police. Finally, one of the Hunger members, too, admitted to being the perpetrator. He said, in all his years working with Chef Paul, he had never tasted food as delicious as he used to cook for customers. Chef Paul also said, only rich people can taste his cooking. If you want to taste it, you have to pay me to cook it for you.
อาชีพของมึงที่นี่จบแล้ว ออกไป
Chef Paul informed for tomorrow's show Aoi who would lead, and due to lack of manpower, Chef Paul appointed Dang to take care of the soup part the next day. When the sun was not fully rising, or it was still early, Chef Paul and his assistants were already at a customer's house. This little family looked like they were depressed and confused. This family also does not seem to be from the rich class.
อร่อยมากเลยค่ะพ่อสีชมพูไปเลย
When Tone was about to serve a soup, Chef Paul suddenly tried to throw the soup away and immediately replace it with tap water mixed with grilled chicken-flavored instant noodle seasoning that he found at the customer's house.
เตรียมใจเรียบร้อย เร็วดิ เรื่องฟองคอนซูเมซุป
After that, when he arrived at Hunger's kitchen, Chef Paul immediately got angry. All because there is a mixture of shrimp in the soup. Their daughter has an allergy to shrimp that can cause death. It turned out that it was all intentional on the part of the oldest and senior member of the restaurant, the Dang who was appointed to take care of the soup section. After being hit by anger from Chef Paul, Dang stabbing Chef Paul in the stomach, Chef Paul becomes very critical and has to get intensive care in the hospital. Due to the unpalatable cooking of the hospital, Aoi tries to make thinly sliced fried rice noodles, using her hereditary recipe to give to the chef. While accompanying Chef Paul to finish the fried rice noodles that Aoi made, Aoi was curious to ask about what made Chef Paul want to become the great chef he is now. Chef Paul explains that when he was a child, his mother worked as a maid in the home of a wealthy family. Every day, Chef Paul always pays attention to the way of life of the rich by eating a slice of bread that caviar is given on top. Out of curiosity, Chef Paul finally desperately wanted to taste the caviar in the refrigerator. But before he could taste it, he was caught and dropped the caviar jar, which was very expensive. His mother was scolded and his salary was deducted for months. While cleaning caviar that had fallen on the floor, Chef Paul realized that the caviar tasted bad. That's what makes Chef Paul want to become a real chef by making food at a very expensive price. Chef Paul finally understood that what the rich man ate showed his social status. The poor eat to overcome hunger, while the rich eat to gain recognition from the people. When she got home, Aoi was surprised that her stall had closed early. Apparently, his father had fainted due to a heart attack due to fatigue cooking rice noodles all day. Aoi saw a news on TV about a family who died by suicide. A family that a few days ago used the services of Hunger Restaurant. It turns out that the father of the family is a wealthy former contractor who is depressed from online loan debt and wants to eat a sumptuous meal before leaving for good. The next day, the recovered Chef Paul and his assistants walked through the river into the forest. It turns out that the Hunger team was hired by a rich hunter to cook his game in the middle of the forest. And after knowing that his game is a bird protected by the state because of its rarity, Aoi, who knew that it was illegal, immediately decided to resign and immediately left the Hunger team. When she gets home, Aoi feels that she needs money for her father's treatment because the proceeds from selling rice noodles are not enough. She then looked for the business card given by Tuz. Seeing Aoi's superb cooking skills, Tuz immediately made a large restaurant for her, complete with a team of assistants from the top graduates of the cooking school. At her fancy restaurant called The Flame, Aoi practices every day, making her first dish very special. With her persistence in cooking, Aoi finally became a successful person. The restaurant is always crowded with visitors from the upper middle class and is always the center of attention for everyone. But behind her success, Aoi doesn't necessarily become an arrogant human. After work, he came to Tone's coffee shop. This Tone has long since resigned from the Hunger restaurant and now prefers to sell milk coffee. Because from the beginning it was always empty of visitors, Aoi invited Tone to join as part of the Flame team. However, Tone refused. Tone said that he did not want to work under Aoi's leadership. Afterwards, Aoi had a meeting with Tuz. Tuz announced that in the near future, Aoi and her team will be invited to cook at the birthday party of Madame Milky, an Instagram influencer who has millions of followers and will be attended by rich people and business people. In between the conversation, Aoi, who feels sorry for Tone who can't pay the rent for her coffee shop next month, persuades Tuz to help Tone. At first, the high five refused because he felt that Tone did not have a good selling point. But because he saw Aoi working very well, he finally wanted to try talking to Tone. When the Flame restaurant was about to close, suddenly a customer came asking to be served the best food in the restaurant.
ร้านปิดแล้วค่ะ
เชฟจะไม่ติชมหน่อยเหรอคะ
ไม่จำเป็นหรอกมั้ง
A week later, the long-awaited day finally arrived. This will be Aoi's first show of cooking after 3 months of her restaurant standing. At the very grand party, it turns out that Madame Milky not only invited Aoi as a cook, but also invited Chef Paul. For the first course, Aoi stole the attention of many people by cooking jumbo shrimp served with beautifully decorated salmon. After they were all tasting Aoi cuisine, suddenly, Chef Paul changed the lights to red and did a cooking show to the extreme. After seeing the anti-mainstream dishes served by Chef Paul, Aoi immediately remembered her stall in the house that had closed and also her father, who was still in the hospital. A food recipe obtained from Aoi's grandmother when her father was a child and sick and very fussy because at that time they had no money at all. Her grandmother Aoi then took all the leftover food in the refrigerator and fried all the food ingredients to give to her father. Meanwhile, Chef Paul, who saw it, immediately served a glass of warm water to neutralize the throats of the guests who had eaten greasy food. And Chef Paul also told Aoi that no matter how delicious Aoi's food is, it can never win against the belief of guests who already consider Chef Paul to be the greatest chef. But a few moments later, several policemen suddenly came to arrest Chef Paul. It turns out it was all because Tone recorded and reported Chef Paul cooking rare bird dishes.
ยินดีด้วยเชฟ
After experiencing a series of very uplifting events, Aoi has come to understand more about the complexities and challenges in the culinary world. She chose to return to his small stall. becoming a fried rice noodle seller at home. And so, the story ended.